Good Monday afternoon to you. Welcome to the Jon Sanchez Show on Newstalk 780 KOH. It's a pleasure to be with you. I hope you enjoyed the 3-day weekend. I know I did. I can't believe it. Went by so absolutely incredibly fast, but it did. We're back at it. But the market, still kind of took a little bit of a vacation today, at least on the NASDAQ and the S&P side of things today. Going to give you all the details what the heck happened today after the holiday shortened session last week. All right, folks, let's get down to it. I'm going to tell you what's on the agenda after I go through my stock market recap with you. You know, millions and millions of Americans enter retirement each and every day. Many of them find out that retirement isn't quite what they wanted because the realization happens that they haven't saved enough money. Taxes, they take a much bigger hit out of their net paychecks, meaning retirement paychecks, than they anticipated. Their investment income isn't quite covering the lifestyle they envisioned, especially when we get into choppy market conditions. So I have a solution for you if you fall into that category. Today, we're going to be discussing a surprise solution. And the reason I say surprise is because a second ago, I just said retirement. Well, listen to me now. This surprise solution is the following: starting a small business in retirement. Yes, you heard me correctly. Wait a minute, retire and then start a small business? Absolutely. And I've been thrilled. I can't wait to talk to you about this topic. We're going to explore how retirees are turning their experiences, their skills, their passions, all into income-producing businesses. And you know, folks, the great thing about it, I don't know how many times I've done this topic over the years, but there's probably not been an absolute better time to be a retiree needing to start a small business for all the reasons I mentioned: taxes, not enough income, or maybe you're just bored. Right? We got a lot of clients that's like, you know what? The retirement thing's okay. You know, I got plenty of money. I'm doing just fine, but I'm bored. I need something to do. Well, you can go to work for somebody and still pay taxes and so on and so forth. Or you can go to work and build some equity for yourself, create a small business. But back to my point, there's not been a better time to do it. Why? This great thing called AI, this great thing called the internet. You can sit in the comfort of your living room, have some AI agents working for you, no payroll or anything, and let them go out and do the work. Let them go out and post on social media advertising your business. Let them scour the internet to find out what competition is doing. Let them write your business plan. The list goes on and on. You just have to have the idea and the vision. And the technology nowadays is there to do all the hard lifting for you. Again, imagine being in retirement. You got everything going fine. But how nice would it be to have a few bucks coming in extra, building some equity into maybe a business that you can sell or pass on to another generation in your family? But in the meantime, you're enjoying some great tax deductions. Now, all of a sudden, part of your home becomes a tax deduction. Your vehicle becomes a tax deduction. Your cell phone becomes a tax deduction. Some of your utilities become a tax deduction. And oh, by the way, you can save in a brand new retirement account. That's right. Tons of advantages. So I've titled today's show, From Retiree to Entrepreneur, Creating Income, Purpose, and Freedom. That's what I'm going to be covering with you. Let's get down to the stock market side of things today. So once again, of course, Friday was a holiday. Market was closed. Thought everything would be fine. Over the weekend, that ceasefire that the market got all excited about over the prior leading into the weekend, well, it started to get a little bit on shaky grounds. J.D. Vance didn't fly over to Switzerland like it was anticipated, and the headlines were just everywhere. Israel fired upon Iran again. Hezbollah got involved. I mean, there are all kinds of headlines. Thought, well, okay, here we go. This thing's already unfolded and the ink's barely dry of what the president signed a couple days ago. But the market came into this morning, went, you know what? This is part of the rhetoric, just like I said on Thursday. This is part of it. Market just doesn't know what to believe anymore. It's going to lean towards the signs of optimism at this point. We can have all kinds of things going on, and the market's going to go, you know what? We know eventually things are going to get handled. And that was kind of it. Woke up this morning, had a couple 100-point gain on the Dow futures, had almost a 200-point gain on the NASDAQs. Things went just fine. And it continued that way until a couple hours into the session. And then things began to fade a little bit. Oil wasn't the problem. Matter of fact, oil was down throughout the session. But the problem was twofold. I'm going to blame two companies in today's sell-off. Company number one I'm going to blame is Google, Alphabet parent, of course. It was one of the worst performing stocks in the S&P 500 today. The stock sank below its 50-day moving average. And if you don't know what 50-day moving average is, remember that, just as the name says, that's the 50-day average price of the stock. It's a technical indicator the traders, the algorithms look at. And when a stock breaks a 50-day moving average, like when it breaks a 100-day or a 20-day, people sit up in their chairs and they take notice of it. Well, when you get a company the size of Google and it breaks its 50-day moving average, that is a negative. So that happened with the stock today. Finished down $18.68. That was about a 5.08% loss to $348.78. But one of the reasons that the stock fell today is the company announced early this morning that a top engineering executive, his name is Jon Jumper. Well, Mr. Jumper jumped Google. He decided to leave them. He actually was running Google DeepMinds, and he joined Anthropic. Well, that headline added to the lingering concerns that I've mentioned so many times on this program over the company's massive AI capital expenditure. The stock is now down about 8% for the month of June. So once that happens with a market leader like Google, it copies over to other names like Meta, finished down $13.37, 2.32% loss to $563.85. Netflix down 5.82%, fell to its lowest level since late 2024. And the communication sector itself was down about 3.8%, ending the day as the worst performing sector out of the 11 of the S&P 500. Amazon down $11.60, 4.75% loss to $232.79 ahead of tomorrow's Prime Day event. SpaceX, this was the second culprit of the weakness in the NASDAQ today. Stock tumbled, got crushed today. $30.40 loss, down 16.43% to $154.60. Now remember, we spent a good portion of last week up over the $200 price range. Remember, our IPO in this was $135. If that stock breaks that $135, that could mean trouble. So this is the third consecutive day that we have seen SpaceX going down, and no one knows why. To take you behind the scenes with Wall Street, there's a lot of games that are played after a company goes IPO. You see, the underwriters, they usually will make sometimes it's written, sometimes it's unwritten rules with the company, meaning a company like SpaceX, saying they will support the stock for a certain number of days, meaning if they start to see selling pressure on it, they will, as the investment bankers, they will step in and start bidding the stock up or try to hold it steady. But when that time period ends, guess what? Then the stock starts to float, just like any stock does on the market. And that's when you really, truly find out if the market believes in this company or if it doesn't. You look back again at all of the hoopla, the biggest IPO ever in history, and the run-up that the stock had its first few days of trading, especially on the opening day. And you look back at all the stories and how this company can do no wrong. And, here it is at only $154.60. So I still think long-term wise, it's going to be fine. The company has massive losses. So it's going to take some time for the street to get adjusted to it, give it some time for it to release its first quarterly earnings numbers, and, some of the basics that we look at in stocks. So if you're in there, as long as you have a long-term horizon, I think you're going to be fine, but be prepared for some short-term choppiness. Let's see. Then we go to some of the other major tech names that weighed on the market today. Microsoft down $12.06, 3.18% loss to $367.34. NVIDIA was down $2.03. One of the stars, however, I should say more of a sector than individual names, was in the semiconductor space. Micron standout after its earnings release last Wednesday. $77.39 gain today, 6.82%, $1,211.38. Supermicro up $4.80, 15.66. Corning, $14.93 rise, up about 7.66% to $209.85. So there were some standouts in the tech space, right? Whether it's semiconductor or some of the other AI-related type of sectors. Only had one major announcement today as far as a merger and acquisition in the healthcare sector. They got a strong boost, that whole group did, by the following news. AbbVie, ABBV, the symbol, rose $13.57, 6.27% gain to $230.06 after the company agreed to acquire Apogee Therapeutics, APGE, for $135.11 in cash. Apogee finished the day at $132.55, up $42.17. No economic reports whatsoever today. Really actually nothing major tomorrow. It's going to be a pretty light week, except when we get towards the end of the week, when we get the Fed's favorite measure of inflation, the personal consumption expenditures. So yeah, we're just kind of struggling for some news also, right? Earnings season just about wrapped up and a lot of the major reports are out of the way. So yeah, just kind of drifting at this point. But how do we set on a year-to-date basis? Not too shabby still. For the year, the NASDAQ is up 12.6%, well off of its highs, obviously. The Dow's gained 7.6%. The S&P is up 9.2%. And my star, Hope you heeded my advice and added some of this to the portfolio months ago. The Russell 2000 higher by 21.1% year to date. All right, when we come back, you're all caught up in the market. I am way ahead of schedule, which I love. How about this? From retiree to entrepreneur, creating income, purpose, and freedom. Welcome back to the Jon Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH. Hope you have a great Monday. All right, here's how we finished up for the day. Had a decent day on the Dow side of things for the entire session, but finished up 148, about 0.29% gain to 51,712. But as you heard me say, the pressure was on the NASDAQ side, 351 pullback, 1.33%, closing at 26,166, and the S&P down 28 points or 0.37%, closing the day at 7,472. On the commodity side, oil was our friend. We finished down $1.40, $75.19 a barrel. Can you believe that? Gold for the day down $42.70, closed at $4,202.16 an ounce. And the 10-year Treasury yield, this was the other negative for the stock market. Bond yields were up across the board, 6 basis point increase on the 10-year to a yield close of 4.51%. All right, with that said, let me get started on my topic today. I've been so excited to talk to you about this throughout the session. Again, millions of Americans are entering into retirement only they discover, man, I don't have enough cash flow coming in. Taxes are taking a bigger hit. I mean, I hear that one. I wish I had $1 for every time I've heard that one. Taxes are taking a bigger hit on my retirement income, on and on and on. So let's come up with a solution for you. For decades, we have been told that retirement means we work hard, we save diligently, we sacrifice, and someday, when that magical day happens, we get to live off of our retirement investments. But what happens? Let me ask you this question. What happens when the numbers just don't work? Again, don't beat yourself up. Maybe you thought you had enough saved up. Something happened. You needed to spend some of the money. Now you don't have the retirement income. Maybe you never were able to save enough money, right? You got kids and grandkids and life itself. And you're like, man, I'm never going to be able to retire. But that's not the case. Not at all. Have faith for me. But bottom line is, what happens if the numbers don't work? What happens when inflation increases your expenses? Where were we this weekend? Yesterday I went to Home Depot. Yeah, I sat in the car. My wife went into Walmart and sat in the car when she went into Tractor Supply. So it must have been Home Depot. Now again, I got to be honest with you. I don't get out a lot and go shopping. I don't have the time to do it. And so when I do go, prices are a shock to me. I got to admit that. And she bought something for Father's Day, something for our Father's Day dinner last night. I can't remember what it was. And I said, you got to be kidding me. It's that expensive? And she just laughed at me. Yeah, I know. Sounds stupid. But the bottom line is, when you are on a fixed income and you mean in a retirement income, every little increase you feel, and you feel it very, very hard. So once again, what do we do, right? Our inflation's rising up or increasing our expenses. Market volatility, not so much right now, but the time will come where it's going to impact your portfolio. If you've never been through a market downturn since you've been retired, you're going to feel it a whole bunch of different ways than you did when you were working. Trust me on that one. Taxes, yeah. We had the big, beautiful bill, helped in some areas, really helped for entrepreneurs. That's why I'm doing part of this subject today. But taxes are taking a lot more. You've heard me show their story millions of times where retirees, once again, we try to prepare them when we do all of our cash flow planning, getting them ready for retirement. But then inevitably you get somebody that didn't, they come in late after they've already retired and they complain because they just got their taxes done. First year they got their taxes done being a retiree, and the accountant informed them they've got to pay quarterly taxes. I'm like, what the heck is this? Yeah, you got to pay the quarterly taxes when you're retired if you don't have enough money withheld from your investment income. So the taxes definitely consuming more than expected. And your retirement savings simply isn't generating the cash flow that you wanted for whatever the reason may be. Maybe a bad allocation. Again, that's a whole different show. But you get my point. Taxes, inflation, not getting enough income off the portfolio, et cetera. And you're going, what in the heck do I do? I don't want to go back to my normal job that I retired from. What do I need to do? Well, today we're going to challenge one of the biggest assumptions in retirement planning. What if retirement doesn't mean that you stop working entirely? You see, there's a I'll call it a movement going on around the country where retirees are phasing into retirement. And nowadays, the reason that that's becoming so prevalent is because employers finally have realized the value of us old folks, right? We have a lot of years of experience, a lot of gray hairs, and employers are going, yeah, maybe I can find a kid 25, 30 years old that, fresh out of college or grad school or whatever, but they don't have the real life experience. Not their fault, but they just don't have it. They're too young. So what if I could bring in, Fred, who wants to retire and slow down a little bit, and mentor that young kid for, again, part-time basis. I've got one situation right now where I have a client, very successful entrepreneur, lots of partners in his business, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to transition into retirement, and I'm seeing more and more companies doing that. So what are you going to do with that free time? Maybe you're going to be able to catch up on honeydews. Maybe you're going to be able to go relax, do whatever you want to do. But maybe the point, or not maybe, but the point will come where you're like, okay, enough of this transition into retirement. I'm fully retired, but I'm not physically and mentally ready to retire. Or again, I need some income or taxes or whatever the case is. So again, what if that solution isn't withdrawing more money from your portfolio, but it's creating a new source of income? Well, today, again, I'm going to get into more details about why more retirees, more than ever, are starting businesses in retirement and how the right business can provide income, purpose, flexibility, potential significant tax advantages. It checks all the boxes. It really does. I told you a second ago, I went to Home Depot and I needed some bags of mortar on a project. I'm building a waterfall. And they were way down on the bottom shelf, way in the back. And I'm like, okay, I don't have the world's best bag. I'm not going to reach down and grab 9 of these 60-pound bags. So I'm going to call for some help. I'm going to put my ego aside. I'm going to call for some help. So here come 2 Home Depot workers. One, a young buck. Another one, guy, I'm guessing probably late 50s, early 60s. And I'm thinking, man, why is this gentleman, this older gentleman, why is he working here? Why is he lifting 60-pound bags of mortar? I always want to ask what their story is. Again, maybe they love it. I've had some clients that have they've gone to work to Home Depot or some other like Lowe's and things like that to work in the garden center because they love gardening. That's cool. But man, to have to do that physical backbreaking work, in your early 60s because things didn't go right. That's what I'm going to try to avoid with you. So when we come back from this break, I'm going to start with my first discussion, which is the retirement income gap. Then I'm going to be getting into things why retirees make incredible entrepreneurs. Then we'll talk about some of the best businesses for you retirees and how about some tax advantages. And then we'll start to wrap things up what businesses really that you should avoid. All that when we come back. Let's turn it over to Jack Saban. He's got news. He's got traffic. He's got weather. Hey, Jack.
You got it.
First, we must understand something. Why are we doing this? Why are we even considering this? Well, I call it the retirement income gap. You see, many retirees discover that, again, the amount of money they've saved, for whatever reason, as I said, I don't care what the reason is, but it's not enough lump sum to provide the income that they need to survive and prosper. As I said earlier, the other reason we have a retirement income gap, inflation. Folks, I don't know about you. I've been around this block a long time. I never see prices go down, of any substance. So this higher inflation that our economy has created over these last few years after COVID and so on and so forth, it's not going anywhere. It's only going to increase. Sequence of returns. I've covered this one many times. This is where I call it Murphy's Law, layman's version, right? You retire next day, or you retire, you get your money invested. Next day, the stock market craters on you, right? Your coworker retires and he invests 2 days later and the market rose. You'll probably never catch up to him for all things being equal. That's called the sequence of returns. And trust me, it happens in retirement. That's why I call it Murphy's Law. Longevity risk. Now, many of you, obviously, hopefully you view this as a positive. We are all living longer, right? We are all living longer. But at the same time, that means our money's got to last us all those many more years. So that's another reason we have a retirement income gap. Rising healthcare costs. My goodness. Yes. Whole nother issue on that side of things. I am seeing many clients that are not of Medicare age of 65 spending probably spending more on medical insurance per month than probably what their first 2 or 3 homes in their life cost them. $1,500, $1,800 a month for a couple is on the low end. And then the taxation of retirement income. I don't need to beat that one. Again, it's income, right? It's like earned income when you start taking money out, from a retirement account, which is where most of your retirement income is going to come from, right? You're going to roll over a 401k. That money's never been taxed. And again, you start taking income off of there. That's taxable income to you. So state, federal, on and on and on if you're in a state that has taxes. So the question I want you to think about for that is this. How much additional income would improve your lifestyle? Take that pressure off. That's where you have to kind of start. Is it $1,000 a month, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, whatever it is? That's where you start with when we get into why retirees make great entrepreneurs. You know, when I put this down on paper and I thought, why do retirees make great entrepreneurs? And it was so obvious, but yet we all know about age discrimination, right? Many companies refuse to hire somebody that's got some gray hairs in their head for various reasons. Well, to heck with them. Take charge of your own financial life. Start a business. But here's why I think retirees make great entrepreneurs. Number one, you've got something, again, that young kid, I don't care if they graduated from an Ivy League school, whatever the case is, they don't have the decades of experience that you have. They have an existing professional network. They have financial maturity. Yes, they do. They know how to make decisions, right? They've been through a million decisions in their life. They have the ability to avoid mistakes that younger entrepreneurs make, which is, I'm building this business to get rich overnight. Got a little maturity behind you, a few gray hairs. You're going to go, you know what? This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Where the young kid goes, this is a sprint. Need to make as much as I can. Go buy the big ski boat, the big lifted truck, do all those things. Another reason that retirees make great entrepreneurs, freedom to choose projects they enjoy. That's right. That's why the planning process is so important, and why I've said many times when I've covered entrepreneurial topics, your number one thing, forget about everything else. Your number one issue is do something you have a passion for. That will carry you through and make you successful. So I kind of highlighted, I'm thinking, what are some of the great businesses for a retiree, right? Obviously, we don't want to do anything physical in most cases. So here's one that I have a couple clients doing right now, and I've had clients in the past that have done this a lot, which is consulting, right? You leave a company, you've got 30, 40 years of experience, you walk out the door, they can hire 10 young people and they don't have the same experience you do. So what I'm seeing now, and again, it goes through ebbs and flows based upon the economy and the jobs picture. But what I'm seeing now is, and I've canceled some clients on this and it's really worked out great. I tell them when we talk about do the retirement plan and they're like, yeah, you know what? I don't want the day-to-day grind, the, quote 9 to 5, like anybody works 9 to 5 anymore. I don't really want that anymore. But I don't want to sit home either. I want to work maybe, part-time, 24 hours a week. So I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. Go and sit down with your manager or the owner of the company, depending upon how big you are, and say, look, here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to come back on a part-time basis, a couple days a week, 3 days a week, whatever you need me. I'm not going full-time though. And guess what? Here's the second part that is really successful. I tell the client, tell them you'll come back as a 1099 employee. Businesses love that, right? Because there's no more payroll taxes. There's no more 401k match. There's no medical insurance. There's none of that. And you win because you're making a higher hourly wage. See, it's a win-win for both. So these companies are jumping all over this strategy that I'm telling my clients to do because, again, they've got all these years of experience. Now, it doesn't last forever. The client doesn't want to do it forever, nor does the business want to do it forever. But it's a phenomenal transition period. And very lucrative. I had one guy that did it years ago. He worked for AT&T and, this was probably 10, 12 years ago. And I'm not kidding you. That gig lasted, I think, north of 10 years. It just worked out beautiful for AT&T and it worked out beautiful for the client. It's a win-win. So come back as a consultant. They'll pay you for it. Come back as a manager, right? A lot of times companies are like, I really don't need a full-time manager. But boy, I'd love somebody again with experience to be my part-time manager. And a lot of them, depending upon the business, will allow you to do it on a virtual basis. And then if you're a specialist, come back as a consultant, right? Again, they can't buy your experience. Professional services, boy, if you've always had a knack for numbers and you're really good with QuickBooks or something like that, start a bookkeeping service, right? Again, I'm trying to do things where you can kind of work from home too. Coaching has ebbed and flowed in our economy. I did it for a number of years with some of our entrepreneurial clients, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But there's a big need out there right now for people to be coached in a lot of different areas. And especially if you have expertise in your industry, come back as a coach, no problem. Training, same thing. If your industry is constantly going through changes, especially like with AI, et cetera, come back as a trainer. That's a short-term gig. Maybe you come back for a week, 2 weeks, and then you're gone. And then you wait for them to call you again, or you go to another company and do some training. Speaking, yeah, believe it or not, with email and text messages, people still like to sit down at an auditorium and hear people speak. They really do. Great business for a part-time entrepreneur. Now, here comes the fun ones, what I call the passion-based businesses. And folks, you can do this, but I'll tell you what they are when we come back. These are really fun and exciting. Back to the Jon Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH. I've been talking about from retiree to entrepreneur, creating income, passion, and freedom. That's right. Starting a business in retirement for various reasons. Now, let's get into some fun ideas. I call these passion-based businesses. Here's a couple of them I'm thinking about. A fishing guide service. I have a handful of clients that love fly fishing. They turned it into a guide business, right? Lord knows we live in the right place to do this. Hunting guides. They go out, they get the proper licensing, credentials, insurance, etc., and you'll find them, trudging through the forest or the Great Nevada Desert, searching for elk and deer and antelope, etc. I can't believe what some people are paying for these guides. Mind-boggling. I've had some clients tell me that it's like, you spent how much to go get that? Yeah, but it happens. But imagine having that as your business. Photography, woodworking. I can think of 5 clients right off the top of my head that I started helped get started in the woodworking business. It was a hobby. They retired. They needed some tax deductions. They wanted some income. They had shops that they built at their property. They turned it into a business. Love it. Absolutely love it. Making money, getting deductions. Craft businesses, I don't have much experience in that one. Online education, huge demand for that. Again, especially if you are a specialist in your area of expertise. Writing books. There is a number of ways now that you can write books without the big capital expenditure up front. It's kind of books on demand. So once again, probably not going to make you rich, but just an idea. And content creation. Once again, if you are an expertise in somewhere, you can sit down and dictate a book. You can sit down and dictate a study course. You can go online now and create your own study course for about $200 and turn around and sell that, right? If you love real estate, here's some ideas. Property management, real estate consulting, home watch services, even becoming a realtor. I've done this with clients many times. They've retired and they love real estate, and maybe they already had some properties under their belt. I'll say, you know what? Go out and get your real estate license. Take you about 6 months to a year to get it. And guess what? You're now a real estate professional. You now have the whole world of income deductions available to you, expense deductions, I should say, once you are a professional. Go do a few deals a month. It's worked out really well. Also, real estate consulting, so on and so forth. You get the idea. Online businesses. Again, this is what I would do if I was retired. E-commerce, digital products, online courses, affiliate businesses. There is a guy, I had him on the show years ago. I won't mention his name. Does a really good podcast where he interviews small business owners. And this guy's making over $2 million a year. He shows his income on his website. He's making over $2 million a year. Almost all of it, about 95, 96% of it is net profit because he uses 2 virtual assistants. But on his income, where he makes his income, is affiliate income. If you don't know what affiliate income is, that's where if I came back from break and I said, hey, you know what, XYZ product is Jon Sanchez's favorite, and then when you log in, use favorite code Jon Sanchez. And then I get a commission for every time that a sale is done. That's called affiliate income. That's called pajama money, folks. That's where you're making money, not even doing anything. So huge amount of money. And again, he makes about over 90% of his income off of affiliate businesses. Now we get into the tax advantages. I think I've touched on this, but let me just hit them once again real fast. Again, business deductions, vehicle expenses, home office deductions, travel expenses, equipment purchases, right? You can write off over $1 million of equipment now in 1 year. Potential retirement plan contributions. I'm working right now with a couple up at the lake that he retired from a government job and he had started a part-time business while he was still working. Well, he retired at a very young age, and now we're doing implementing all kinds of strategies for his new business. And one of those is what's called a solo 401k. And it's going to be really successful for he and his wife. She's involved in the business where they can shelter a whole bunch of money. They can borrow against it. They can do all kinds of things that a Fortune 500 company can do. They're just a little business. What businesses should you avoid? This is the last one I'll leave you with. Please do not get into debt in retirement. This is where people have problems. Don't go rent a big fancy space. Don't go start a restaurant. In other words, stay away from high capital requirements. Stay away from excessive debt. Don't jeopardize your retirement savings to start this business in retirement. Stay away from complex franchises, labor-intensive businesses, right? Your body's slowing down a little bit. Don't get involved in something that's going to require you to go out and beat the heck out of your body. Don't get into a business where you have employees, or one that, if you do have employees, make it a small number. In other words, stay away from the large payrolls. They will kill you. And most importantly, speculative ventures, right? Some businesses will make it, some will fail, but the bottom line is you're in control. Take a look at it. If again, I checked all the boxes for you as far as what you need in retirement, you need to lower the taxes, get a little bit more income, have some financial freedom, etc. Take a look at this idea. And if you have any questions, just give me a call. I'll be more than happy to coach any of you. 775-800-1801. God bless. Have a great afternoon. See you tomorrow on the Jon Sanchez Show.